we, the reason for it is we want to create a bit of interest around the sort of technologies that we think are important, particularly to our business going forward. Like blockchain and quantum ledger, artificial intelligence, machine learning, IoT, and so on.
Okay.
And, having worked for IBM for a long time, I've got plenty of points of view on all these things, as you know. So I thought a Q&A with different people around these topics would be quite interesting. And also for me, because I love talking about it. So hearing your thoughts on the subject is just great fun for me as well. So that's
okay. Well, I love to talk about this stuff. So let's hope we can have a decent conversation and see where it goes.
Okay. I mean, just if we can kick off then, because I always notice in your posts on LinkedIn, you talk about, you have almost a strapline of blockchain as a governance technology. So less about it's an enabler of benefits or it's an infrastructure, or, you very specifically pick on the word governance. And I'd be fascinated to know why you think blockchain is a governance technology above all else.
Well, so why is blockchain a governance technology? Well, I think what we're doing is we're building the new internet. And just being a little technical for a moment, I think blockchain is the state machine for this new internet. So in other words, it is keeping track of who owns what and who has done what to assets of value on this new internet. And a couple of things I think which are particularly important about that. First of all, who is going to be doing this governance work? Well, it's the combination of the owner of the data. And I think the first time we're kind of recognizing that the consumer has never been a full member of the internet. You're always using data which has been managed and governed by somebody else. And as we build this new internet, and you talked about IoT and AI, there's a huge amount of new data as we instrument the world around us, which is going to be driving a new generation of AI apps. What's critical is to make that link between who owns that data and who monetizes that data. So not to reinvent the Facebook model where you give away your services for free. And I think what's so important to understand is a lot of people, when they think about user data, they think about digital dust. What website have I visited? How can I drive some advertising? And I think what's so interesting about this new digital economy that we're at the point of building is that this is new data that's never existed before. Because we're instrumenting the world around us, we're having the ability to understand what's going on and drive all these new apps. So this ownership and tracking of who does what is owned by the right person, the owner of the data. And the thing which is making that possible is it is a community, a decentralized, distributed community that is maintaining that ledger. So it's not one person maintaining the ledger, it's not the land registry, it's a community in a decentralized fashion. And I think we are almost like creating a new social contract. It's like a social contract, which says, if you have data, bring your data into this collaboration, this new collaborative internet, and it's a win-win environment. There's an incentive for both parties to want to share that data. And it's much more transparent than the old world where, the Facebook world, you give up your data and you don't really know the deal that you've made until you realize it's a good deal. So I think core of all of this is governance, ownership control, ownership control of data and new types of data.
It's really interesting though, because as you were saying that, I was thinking of the trading world, because that's kind of where we're sat. So the B2B, more so than B2C at this point. And when you talk about instrumentation, new data, of course, for that world, if you're a grower of produce, let's say, or you're an exporter of it, and you have cold stores and you have warehouses and you have processing centers, so I can take your logic further, you will get new data. As you say, you're going to know when it's received into the pack house, you're going to know at what temperature it's in, and so on and so forth. So, and you're going to know into your third parties, they've got a facility and it goes in and out of, etc. So do you own the data because you own the product in that instance? Or are you still delegating ownership in some sense because they are the ones with the new data? And maybe that's not a well put question, but
I'm going to answer that question maybe from a slightly different perspective, because I also have worked for a long time in the B2B space, and one of the classic problems you find in the B2B space is, if only we could share this data, look at the problems that we could solve. But in this new, of course, this data becomes your differentiating asset. So why on earth would I want to share my data? Why would I want to collaborate? Who am I going to collaborate with? Over my would I let my competitors onto this network? Okay. Now, if we're going to be building something at the level of the internet, it's got to be open, right? So we have to have this kind of environment. And what I think I'm increasingly seeing is kind of like a subtle variation on what sharing of your data actually means, right? Let's say, for example, we're collecting all of this wonderful data. What's the temperature of my van? How full is the van? Where is it? All of this data, this IoT type data, there's a possibility to drive ML against this, machine learning algorithms. And when you look at the data which is actually shared and the data which is monetized, it could be the learnings and the analytics out of this data. So in other words, what you're saying is, well, okay, if I collaborate with my upstream, downstream, with the other folks in the value chain, this data is going to have value in aggregate, and it can drive a new generation of AI apps. So we're bringing in innovators into this kind of this like marketplace, which is sitting over this data exchange, where they're getting real-time insights into how busy are the roads, how full is the truck, what is the temperature, what's happening kind of real time, and it's almost like this kind of trickle feed of monetization, which is why I really need the token to go with the data exchange, because you're almost like creating this trickle feed of value, right? Which you're accounting for in this token. And you couldn't do this in fiat because we're probably dealing with quite small, lots of very small transactions. So this is not really practical to be driving through traditional payment rails. You need some form of accounting, right? So you're at least going to use the token for accounting, but because we're looking to build this new social contract, because we're looking to change behavior, it naturally extends into the incentive model. So not just accounting, but incentive. And then that drives back into the governance, where the governance organization can say, as a collective, how do we incentivize healthful behavior? And how do we reward people for sharing their data? Because maybe I'm sharing some of the learnings from my data, and I'm not getting fairly enough rewarded for that. So can I maybe, as a community, we will mint these tokens and pay you to share the data, to try and democratize the benefits across the value chain. So I think that we are at the point of solving, I think, a whole lot of new problems. And one of the problems that I've been looking at is this whole energy crisis, and the fact that you're generating wind and solar power because we're looking to go green, but of course that's no use when the wind isn't blowing or the sun isn't shining. So how do you store your energy? So cars are becoming like batteries on wheels. We could maybe build a new decentralized grid, for example, where people are trading in their power and their battery. You charge it up while energy is cheap. You sell it when it's expensive. You link it up to the solar panels on your roof. You start to sell this peer-to-peer in a community, and you're building almost like a new economy. That's an extension where we go from B2B into B2C, right? But from a B2B point of view, you've got that wider marketplace which is building. How can I offer services to folks when they're charging their car? Maybe not at home, but maybe out on the road. Can I add in extra services? How can I start to add in value-added services around roadside assistance or the whole marketplace? So I think the whole thing is growing from there.
Yeah, again, that's really interesting. And my biggest struggle with blockchain has always been the fact that you need so many things. It's like you got to raise sea level to get it to work. And raising sea level, I know we're doing that already, but trying to do it, actively trying to do it, is very difficult. Okay. My next question was around this sort of: is is it a better governance than existing ones? Does it open up new business opportunities? And I think that's a reasonable question to ask, because if we say it's governance, that's fine, but it's obviously replacing or supplementing existing governance models, and they're probably more human trust-based models. I have a relationship with you, therefore I trust you to work within certain parameters and so
on. Well, so I've been quite careful to put my point of view, which is, I think the problem that we're trying to solve, I think, is less about optimizing the world as it is, and more about how do we get the most out of this new digital economy that we're building. So for example, the land registry. I'm more than happy for the land registry to manage the title to my home, right? Even my bank account. I'm more than happy for the bank account to manage my balance on my account and facilitate payments as we used to, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not really looking to use this technology to disintermediate working, right? What I'm saying is, we're almost building like a brand new economy. We've had the agricultural economy, we've had the industrial economy, and we're only really getting used to the digital economy. Now, you and I are old enough that lived the very birth of the digital economy. I can remember when there were no computers in the office. The first person to literally have a computer, in the office, right? Right. But that's really a short time. We're only really trying to get used to what this digital economy means. And I think we're at the point of this digital economy really exploding as we instrument everything and as we create all of this new data. And I think that's what drives the new business models, be it in supply chain, be it in health, be it in automotive. And I think what we're doing is we're creating a new marketplace which sits on top of the world as it is.
Okay, interesting,
the world as it is. We're creating a whole lot of new data which never existed. This data is only really valuable if it's shared by the members across the value chain. So we have to find a way that the owner of the data doesn't lose control of that data. We talk about governance. They monetize it in a way which is incenting them, and you're allowing innovators to come in and drive a whole new marketplace of applications. And I think this is where you then start to solve problems like developing new drugs and much more personalized medicine. This is where you start to solve problems like the energy crisis and how the hell do I build a grid which is going to support electric cars, and how do I fix these problems which we really can't fix with our existing industrial age thinking. So I think it's about innovation and it's about new. So I don't think let's disintermediate the land registry.
Right.
Perfectly good job, but I do think, if I'm going to be creating all of this new data, how do I avoid the mistakes of the past? I don't want to wake up in 5 years' time or 10 years' time and say, oh, bloody hell, what did I give to Facebook? Did I really mean to do that?
Yeah. And it's interesting. I'll go down my question because I'd kind of, funnily enough, I talked to Paul Chang the other week, and you remember Paul?
Yeah.
And he was saying the same thing about Web3 in the sense that, it's only when you've got something like that marketplace, call it Web3 or whatever, that you've got the ability, you've got the potential of a truly decentralized commerce, as it were. And that's when it will click into place. We don't have that. So it's a stuttering, blockchain is stuttering in a commerce sense, because you don't really have that umbrella commerce framework in place called Web3 or whatever you want to call it, to say, oh, well, we've got to do it this way now. This is the only way that's going to work, So I think that's really interesting, because what you're saying is really aligning with what he said there, I think, albeit from different angles, I mean, what do you think the key get rights are in building a blockchain network that leverages the value of this governance capability? Because it's all about building networks in blockchain. You can't start with one bloke and his dog and never move out from that little sheep pen. It's got to go. So what are the key get rights in your view for building that network?
Well, so I'm going to start by looking back over the last 5 years. Then I'm going to look forward, and I'm going to be a little controversial here. But looking back now, I think that the networks that have been built, they sit in two camps. They're either in the enterprise camp, where you're in a private permissioned world, or you're in the Web3, the crypto world. And looking backwards over the last 5 years, I don't think either of those have been especially successful, right? So why would that be? Well, if you look on the enterprise side, I think that we have largely been trying to optimize the world as it is. So we've got a ton of wonderful data, but it's legacy data, and nobody really wants to share it. So it's very hard to build out internet level solutions. You know, you can build out small little cliques, but you can't get the network effects and the synergies of a genuine industry level solution, right? You then go to the crypto world, and the problem with the crypto world is it's so abstract, right? It's very difficult to see, well, where's the utility, where's the business use case, right? And I think what we have to do moving forward now is stick these two together. And I think that's what makes the successful blockchain of the future. So you have that combination of that permissionless marketplace. So it's at the level of the internet. So what does that mean? Well, maybe you're building on Ethereum. Maybe. What does that mean? Well, everybody's there. So your network effects are far easier to achieve. You don't have to rebuild the internet for every single private permission network. But we still have this problem of compliance, right? So I think we need to have maybe a mind shift. So right now, if you look at how the banks are coping with things like KYC, AML, literally every single transaction is being KYC'd and AML'd, right? It's like moving into this surveillance world, right? Whereas I think as we move into this new digital economy, and bear in mind, I'm not lifting and shifting the old into the new, I'm building the new on top of the existing, right? It has to start out permissionless, it has to start out open, because I need everybody there, it's internet level. But I have to do KYC, I have to do compliance, I have to do the AML, right? So I think what's going to happen is we have this permissionless world, you're known, your address is your wallet, but we have AI and ML running against this, looking for suspicious patterns, right? And then what you then do is, I'm working on a project right now which is looking to do this. You then integrate your MetaMask wallet into your credentials world. So on the private permission world, you have that issue hold verify cycle of credentials. You know, so I've been issued my driving license. It was issued by the DVLA. It's still a valid license. I haven't been disqualified through whatever requirement. I can therefore drive my car. Or whatever the compliance requirement is. And you're sharing that data between the permission world and this open marketplace. And you're doing it on like a zero knowledge proof basis. So you're disclosing the minimum amount of data to get through that compliance gate. So ultimately, you know, you might need to drill down to, well, it's a UK taxpayer, it's Andy Martin, right? Or you'll be able to comply at a higher level. But I think we're changing the way that, because if you look at private permissioned networks, you know, we started by thinking, well, I have to fix the KYC AML problem, right? Whereas I think we need to think differently, and I think that's the way that you get the openness, the network effects, the synergies, and the compliance. And by putting these two worlds together, you then get that token which is driving the marketplace, which is used both for great velocity of transactions on your marketplace, but also is linked into the incentive for sharing the data.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So albeit the learnings, the analytics. So I think that's how we need to move forward.
Okay, that's very helpful. Actually, it really gives me an understanding of that. And you know, my next question was, and it's something we've talked about in our LinkedIn post, is do you think blockchain, and in the way that you've described it, creates a new kind of trust? I'm a big fan of the word trust, and I like to play with that word because it is so fundamental to business. You know, I think blockchain truly creates a new kind of trust. We talked about it many years ago when blockchain started and said, hey, it's a trust mechanism.
Well, yes, it does. But again, let me repeat some of the things I've said before. I'm not looking to disintermediate the land registry. I'm not even be looking to disintermediate the bank necessarily. I'm not really looking to optimize the world as it is, though there's an element of that, of course. I'm really looking to build this new economy based around sharing of data. And I do think that the governance is so critical to this that I know as a data owner that I am governing my data. and I am controlling who gets to see it. I have the zero knowledge proof, for example, on the identity side. I may be only selling access to machine learning agents to look at my IoT data, or maybe I'm sharing the actual data if perhaps I'm on a medical healthcare marketplace. But I'm in control of how my data is used. And the way I can trust that is because it is the decentralized community that is governing the update of the transactions onto the ledger. So they're ordering and validating the ledger. So it's not that one bank, that one land registry. So we don't need to have that new. And for me, that's the Facebook model, where I was saying I don't want to reinvent Facebook. So we've quite happily had Google and Facebook. We don't want to, and they've worked fine for Web 2, but I sure as hell don't want to recreate those in Web 3. I have a new social contract where the benefits, the visibility and the transparency and the benefits of this collaborative economy are shared fairly across all the participants in the network. And that for me is what the governing function there is doing, about creating the grease or the wheels to make this marketplace turn. And there's plenty of competition and innovation, but it's at the level up. It's where you say, how can I use this to create my own private app store and my own private apps, and I'll compete against somebody else's app store and their private apps. But we're harvesting data at the level of the internet. So this is not just 5 companies sharing data in one supply chain, is internet level data. And you need that to really drive the analytics and the AI, to really understand and instrument the world around you and benefit that in the next generation of apps.
Got it. Yeah, I understand now. Okay. The other question I had was around this personal relationships and middlemen, but you've sort of answered that, as you say. Existing world will stay, and there will be a role and a place for people who fulfill functions that we're all comfortable with.
Yes.
We're creating a new model on top of that, and I get that point and principle. So maybe perhaps just a general reflection on blockchain then. I mean, Andy, you've been in part of the journey as I have for several years now, and looking back, I have certain reflections on it. I mean, could you conclude with a couple of reflections based on your own personal experience of that, going through that journey with blockchain?
Well, so I think that we started out in the enterprise world by saying blockchain good, crypto bad.
Yeah.
And I think what that did is it cut us off from this idea of openness and therefore network effects, and it kind of forced us down into reinventing the internet for each individual network. And
that's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
Also, because we're largely working with the incumbent, you inevitably find yourself trying to optimize the world as it is. And as you want to optimize the world as it is, particularly with a relatively small network, you think, well, why am I doing this on a blockchain? I could really do this on a central database.
Great point.
And the point is, you've taken the first helpful steps, but you're building the internet, so it has to be open, right? And you want everybody to be there. And I think what's happened is, really, if you want that openness and you want everybody to be there, you've got to go to something like Ethereum or the, so there'll be a number of standards in the open permissionless world, which will be the new internet. But we were not wrong in our drive for enterprise blockchain, in that we still have compliance requirements, we still have privacy requirements. So we get around those by doing things like that integration of your credentials in the private world into the open world for the KYC. And for things like the data, we need to say, well, okay, yes, I'm not going to give away my data. It's my core differentiating asset. Why the hell would I do that? But what I can do is I can keep that data behind my firewall nice and secure, but I can share it with some machine learning. So I'm sharing the analytics, I'm sharing the learnings. And that analytics and that learnings only really has significance if it's combined with other data sets. That I don't have enough data on my own to drive a meaningful analytic or ML, because we're internet level. And that's how you make. And then you use the governing model. Then you need the token to then really cope with this high velocity of trading in our data exchange. So lots of small transactions. We can't do that on fiat. Okay, you want to transfer value and ownership at the same time. So no, you're doing everything in the time it creates to generate a new block. That value exchange and the whole settlement piece. And you then have the ability to link these tokens, which is your marketplace currency, into a governing token, which is giving you the rights to vote. Right? So it's a little bit like the equity of this marketplace. The more token you hold, the more voting that you have, right? Which then enables you to say, well, actually, we need to incentivize some of these smaller players in the value chain to share their data. We need to give them more value. Let's vote to give them extra tokens because we can share their data. And I think, for me, I think both sides of the blockchain world have needed the other. The open world, the Ethereum world needs the real industry use cases. And the industry world needs the openness and the network effects and the incentive model of the permissionless world. So we have to stick the two together. We have to bring in compliance. We have to bring in regulation. So there's a whole new level of regulation, So if we look at this token that we're going to use, it almost has like the level of a GDP for the marketplace that we're building, right? So there's going to have to be some regulation around this. What reserves do you have to hold against this token? Is it 1-to-1 to fiat? Is it 1-to-10? It's almost like a new type of bank.
Yeah.
Because if you link that into the DeFi world, it's almost like a new type of bank. You're just automating the credit and the underwriting in a smart contract. And just as a bank needs to be audited for its leverage, so does this token need to be audited. So there's a new level of audit around the truth and fairness of the currency behind this marketplace. So I think we've barely started. We seem strange for a job that's getting me busy for 5 years, but I really think I think we've had a lot of false steps, and I think I'm only now beginning to understand what it is we need to do. I didn't understand all this 5 years ago.
Yeah. No, I always remember hearing the word blockchain for the very first time when someone wanted me to go to Walmart and say they're doing something with blockchain. And I said, what the hell is blockchain? Never forget that.
Well, exactly. So yes, I've been trying to understand that for 5 years, and I feel I'm a little closer, but still not there. Because I think ultimately it's about a new social contract and a new economic model for a collaborative economy. And I think the reason we need a collaborative economy is the only way we can make, as a society, full benefit of all the data which we are instrumenting and creating is if we find a way to share it. And it's so frustrating to go to a big construction building site and find all this wonderful IoT data, but all sat in silos. If only that person knew about what that person knew, who knew what that person knew, think of all the things we could solve. But they won't share their data. So we need the economic model to make it worth their while to do that, which is about this new marketplace of services. And we need the privacy around not losing monetization of your data, not giving away your crown jewels, and we need to do it in a way which is compliant. And I think all of these pieces are just slowly coming together. So I think we're starting, and I think we're in an economy which is going to be far bigger than the industrial economy. It's going to be far bigger than the agriculture. I think the world is on the edge of a golden era.
Well, that's a great line to finish with, isn't it, Sharon? We just make sure we capture that one. I think, and it's a great one. I'm not being funny. I'm not being insincere. I think it's a great line to finish on, because if you take that and you think, oh, that's interesting, maybe we are. Maybe the opportunity is there. Maybe this is a way we should be thinking about things. And I think you're right. I mean, I hadn't really seen some of the things that you've been talking about, but you've been digging into this day in, day out for some time now, Andy, whereas I left it a little bit, or quite a lot. Well, thank you very much, Andy. I really appreciate it.